Hello Total War fans, this is Sons of Three Kingdom. We are back with another trailer analysis, or rather gameplay analysis this time. This is the new Let's Play of the Ambush of Sun Ren. So I'm gonna take this in the same direction as the Battle for Xiapi, which is actually the first video I uploaded, where I'm going to go through it, but I'm gonna go through it on mute, and I'm gonna talk about kind of the historical aspects of you know, this battle. So let's get to it. So whilst they're all just setting up, I'm going to go through kind of the background of this. First of all, I'm very happy that they decided to do an ambush battle. Ambuscades were just a huge part of early Three Kingdoms warfare. The reason ambushes were so important during this stage, or over history, is because, as I've mentioned before, the armies of this age initially were just very poorly trained. They were mass levies. They didn't really have the morale, the discipline, the drilling necessary to really stave off an ambush. So if you could lay a successful ambush, that was basically the battle decided, because nobody could really stand up to that. So a lot of, great victories and defeats were just basically decided by ambushes, who was better at these like mind games and psychological warfare about when to go, and also about who knew the lay of the land better and who could kind of control timing better. Now, this battle, the Ambush of Sun Ren, did not happen in history. I want to make that clear right away. Literally 0 parts of this battle is historically accurate, but I do think that there is a historical precedent for this battle that they probably drew inspiration from. And the precedent for this is the ambush of Sun Jian, which is Sun Ren and Sun Qian's father. Now, as I kind of explained last time, I'm just going to pause this in a bit, just so we can kind of catch up. So, as we explained last time, Sun Jian won great renown during the alliance against Dong Zhuo, and after the coalition fell apart, and in the romantic traditions as well, oops, sorry about that. In the romantic traditions as well, this was the time that he got the imperial seal. He decided to depart with his own men and his own followers back to the lands of Jiangdong, which is the southeast of China. That's his home base and his support base. A lot of that is there. The leaders of the coalition, specifically Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu, heard about this, and they basically ordered their allies from the south to ambush Sun Jian because they were, afraid of his growing influence, and now he's leaving with this battle-hardened army, and they had proven themselves in the field against Dong Zhuo very well. So, they really needed to kind of get rid of him. Now, the historical ambush of Sun Jian was a tragic event because Sun Jian died in this battle, and he, left his family without their protector and leader. Historically, this battle, I mean, in here they have Cao Cao plays the side of the ambusher. That obviously didn't happen. At this time, Cao Cao had already left the alliance. He was on the verge of leaving the alliance, sorry, at this time. And also, he was just like on the other side of China, so he wouldn't have been able to affect this. And furthermore, the leaders of this battle they have is Sun Quan and Sun Ren. Now, as I explained before, Sun Ren is not a real historical character. She is most likely a composite of mostly Lady Sun, who is Sun Jian's not youngest daughter, but one of his younger daughters. And I mean, I guess to add to the historical impossibility of this battle, at the time of Sun Jian's ambush, Sun Quan was 11 or something like that, and Lady Sun would have been even younger than her. So definitely neither of them were in a place to lead an army. There wasn't any case in Three Kingdoms, unfortunately, of women leading armies. I did mention in the last video that women played an important role often in the Three Kingdoms, and especially in the Sun family, but none of them were battlefield commanders. But, as I said, I don't really mind at all, because they were important to Three Kingdoms history, and many other characters who are depicted in these games, especially the strategists and some of the kind of like great civilian administrators, they wouldn't have been on the battlefield either. So I think it's completely fine for important people to be represented. And Lady Sun was definitely an important person. Sun Quan is a very important person. Sun Quan would eventually become the head of the Sun family and then the founder of the state of Wu. He would later become the emperor of the state of Wu after his dad and his brother, unfortunately died. He was never, a great battlefield commander either, but he really didn't need to be. I don't think that would have been wise or appropriate because he was like the head of the entire faction. You can't have that guy on the front of the battlefield. Also, he was just absurdly young. The reason I paused here is because I kind of want to go over this character, Jia Shu. They basically made a few Cao Cao's characters, like generals here, as battle fodders, as cannon fodders, sorry, because you need an enemy, obviously. But Jia Shu was very, very important. He was arguably one of the best strategists in the entire Three Kingdoms age. So to give, and I think it's very appropriate that he will be leading an ambush such as this. To give an example of something that Jia Shu did, once, this was before he had joined Cao Cao, when he was serving another general called Zhang Xiu. Cao Cao and Zhang Xiu had gone to war. Cao Cao had put Zhang Xiu's home city under siege, it's called Wancheng, which means one city, and Cao Cao had to lift the siege because something else had happened on one of his other fronts. The early days, Cao Cao was just basically surrounded by enemies, constantly fighting like 2-3 wars at a time. So as he was lifting the siege and as he was fleeing, Zhang Xiu and also his ally Liu Biao, who was another warlord to the south, they wanted to go after Cao Cao. They said, he's leaving in such a hurry, we can chase him without cavalry, we can, catch up to maybe get their supply train and maybe win a sneak victory off of them. Jia Shu at this point said, no, you cannot do that. The reason you can't is because Cao Cao is a veteran battlefield commander. He had planned this escape, so he's going to have a rear guard. And they ignored him because, he's a battlefield tactician, but he's not a general. So they chased after Cao Cao, and just as Jia Shu predicted, they were defeated by an ambush by Cao Cao's elite rear guards. And after they kind of slink back on the same day defeated from their sortie, Jia Shu said, okay, now go. You have to go now. And Liu Biao at this point basically didn't believe him. He's like, you were right the first time, where we shouldn't go. We should just let Cao Cao get away. He's no danger to us at this point. But Zhang Xiu decided to heed his strategist's advice and go after Cao Cao. And he won a great victory because Jia Xiu's entire gambit was, they're not going to be expecting the same thing twice. He needs to get away. Once his rear guard has already won a victory, he thinks the threat is gone and they're just going to go back. They're just going to start retreating as fast as possible. He's not going to have 2 rear guards. And that's what I mean in terms of ambushes during this period being these in a sense almost intense bluffs and mind games. So yeah, he's a very interesting character. I hope I get to talk about him in depth one day, but he's not, he's not intensely important, I guess. During the Three Kingdoms, people just call all these people strategists. Anybody who wasn't like a commanding officer was a strategist. That's kind of inaccurate. There were some who were more able at diplomacy or administration or civil administration. There were some that were more capable of military administration. And then there's people like Jia Xiu who, could basically be called battlefield strategists. They were like aides-de-camps. They followed the commander around and they tried to make observations, just on the field. So if any of you know anything about Three Kingdoms at all, you'll know that the most famous Three Kingdoms strategist is a man called Zhuge Liang, i.e. the sleeping dragon who served Liu Bei. And this is for example, one of the points of confusion in that people believe Zhuge Liang is the greatest strategist of all time. He's the greatest probably military and civilian administrator of all time, but he was no battlefield strategist at all. The history on that simply doesn't bear out. The kind of story I described of Jia Shu making these crazy, snap decision gambits, Zhuge Liang in history at no point made any of those. In fact, he was actually a very cautious commander and strategist. He wasn't somebody who was that daring. what else is interesting to talk about? Okay, I'm gonna focus a bit on this man. Like Jiaxu, he's also a very important player, but you know, for the purposes of this Let's Play, they're gonna make him just another cannon fodder. So this man is called Jong Leo. I briefly alluded to him in the Battle of Xiapi video, but Jong Leo, at that point, he was one of Lu Bu's generals, and then later he went on to serve Cao Cao. I alluded at that point that Zhang Liao became one of Cao Cao's greatest generals, and indeed one of the greatest generals of the age. The best way to describe this is what Hannibal was to Rome, Zhang Liao was to the Sun family and the state of Wu. They even, there was even like apocryphal stories and historical records about how eventually Zhang Liao's name became synonymous with a boogeyman in the state of Wu. When Wu parents would need to scare their children into obeying them, they would go, "Zhang Liao is coming for you. Zhang Liao is at the gates." Because eventually Cao Cao basically set this guy up as the chief general of just the entire front against Sun Quan and the state of Wu. And he was a ferocious general. I don't think, I don't actually ever recall him losing a battle when he was in command, and he was in command for many, many decades. He was that good. He once defeated Sun Quan, despite being outnumbered something like 5-1. That was the Battle of Hefei. And incredibly, because he was one of the few generals who had a really good head for command, and was also just apparently okay with charging with his bodyguards right into the thick of battle. It was that perfect mix of kind of like martial prowess and also just tactical smarts. He wasn't a brute or anything. You'll see here that some of the men have started lining up in formations. There's some shield wars going over there. There was a square formation. I think this is very appropriate because formations were a huge part of battle in ancient China. Now, ancient China, like Han Dynasty China, unlike, say, Rome or the Greek city-states, they never settled on one formation. They never settled on just the maniples or just the phalanx. But because there was just like a lot more variety to arms, I think the diversity of China, the geographic diversity, just gave rise to a lot of different types of troops. So there was never really any, set formations, but there were like canonical formations. The box is one of them. Shield wars are one of them. Sun Tzu in the Art of War dedicated entire chapters to just like formations and fighting. I want to. Another general had just come up, and I kind of want to go over him as well, but I feel like I might have to go back a bit. I'm sorry. Bear with me. Alright, this is Zhang Liao getting killed. Never happened in history. Zhang Liao was great. He never dies. He's my homeboy. Okay, so this guy is named Xu Huang. Xu Huang is another one of Cao Cao's greatest generals, and also one of the greatest generals of the age. The dude carried a huge axe, apparently. Don't know if that's true. But what we do know is that he has a stellar military record. He never really faced the Sun family, as he did here. But what he did do was eventually, his climactic battle was against Guan Yu. Guan Yu, as I've, kind of shown before, he's one of the sworn brothers of Liu Bei, and he is, after Lu Bu died, people started like calling him the god of war. One of Guan Yu's last campaigns, he was making a massive attack against Cao Cao to the north, and he tore through Cao Cao's defenses. The huge army that Cao Cao sent to oppose him was wiped out in a flash flood. So Cao Cao's capital and his heartlands were left entirely defenseless, except for Xu Huang and his army of levies. And Xu Huang, in kind of like from the historical records you read, kind of like in an Erwin Rommel move, he didn't even wait for his levies to gather, and he just started attacking piecemeal, and but kept his men, even though they were kind of raw recruits, in such good order that Guan Yu and his battle-hardened troops just couldn't overwhelm him, and Xu Huang basically held Guan Yu off in a series of engagements. And after that, Cao Cao just compared him to some of China's greatest historical generals and said, you are among them. I guess similar, going back to Roman history, in the way that, Hannibal compared himself to, Alexander the Great and Pyrrhus of Epirus. So yeah, Xu Huang is another fantastic character. Unfortunately, for the purpose of this battle, he's a cannon fodder. I'll say that one thing I hope they do more with in this game is I would like to see ranged units and skirmishers take a much bigger role than what I've seen so far. That's really my one complaint, and it's a common misconception, but China, they weren't, these were the people who invented crossbows, and they also had invented repeater crossbows. And if you played Age of Empires 2's the Choco News, and they also at this point had invented something that was like a multi-shot crossbow. They had ballistas, arbalests, and range formations, and especially horse archers were incredibly important. So I'm kind of sad to see that so far none of those kind of units had made an appearance, especially horse archers. Almost like over half of the cavalry in most of these armies would have been horse archers, but instead they seem to have just gone for like a, more kind of lancers, melee cavalry, etc. Yeah, but if you can imagine an army that was, so for example, the Northern Army, which was the Han Dynasty's standing army that was in charge of guarding the capital, the Northern Army was, the composition of the Northern Army, it had 5 camps. It was 4,000 men, professional soldiers. It had 5 camps, and these 5 camps were regiments of 800 men each. And of these 5 regiments, one of them was infantry. One of them was a so-called, I think, it was a shock cavalry, basically. The other one was called garrison cavalry, which would have acted in a manner similar to dragoons. They would ride to a position, using crossbows and bows, lay down fire, etc. They would fight, but they were more like dragoons. They weren't really shock cavalry. And another regiment was archers, and the last regiment was called the Regiment of Sishui, which is like the Sea River Regiment, and that was a regiment of horse archers. So you can see that of the Han Dynasty's standing armies, permanent standing capital army, the capital garrison, their version of the Praetorians, if you will, it was 60% cavalry and 20% archers and 20% infantry. So yeah, I hope they do get some of that. As I said, I've been overall very happy with the direction this game has been taking, but right now it seems too much like an infantry, archer, melee cavalry kind of triangle. Okay, so the actual aftermath of this battle, well, this battle didn't happen, but the actual aftermath of the ambush of Sun Jian, which this battle was based off, as I said, Sun Jian was killed, the greater part of his forces managed to get away, but the Sun family was left without a patriarch and a protector, and they were almost scattered to the winds. Sun Ce, Sun Jian's oldest son, who was, I think, at that time probably 19 or something, but apparently an accomplished warrior, had to go to the camp of Yuan Shu and serve as a follower of Yuan Shu for many years, which couldn't have been easy for him, knowing that he was serving a man who was kind of related to the man who had his father killed. Lady Wu led some of the family back to Jiangdong to kind of like bide their strength and build connection networks. As I said, both of these peeps would have been way too young at this age to have really any effect. So that is my analysis of this trailer. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be attempting to actually make more content. But you know what? If I don't, it's fine. This game is a long way from coming out. We'll space it out. Alright, thanks all. Peace.